Good evening and welcome to this 33rd Legislative District Live Telephone Town Hall with your state legislators, Senator Tina Orwall, Representative Mia Gregerson, and Representative Edwin Obras. If you have a question for your legislators, please press 0. The 33rd Legislative District covers SeaTac, Normandy Park, and parts of Burien, Des Moines, and Kent. My name is Lily, and I will be your host tonight. Thank you for taking the time to join us. The 105-day session has adjourned, and your state lawmakers want to give you an update and answer your questions. So please press 0 on your phone right now to ask a question, and you will be placed on the queue. Again, we are calling you tonight because your lawmakers want to answer your questions. Press 0 to ask them about issues that matter to you, such as healthcare, education, the environment, technology, energy, transportation, and why not, the budget. Okay, so if you have a question for Senator Tina Orwall, Representative Mia Gregerson, and Representative Edwin Obras, please press 0 right now to speak with your lawmakers. Remember, press 0 on your phone right now to ask a question. I will now turn it over to your legislators for some opening remarks. Let's start with Senator Orwall.
Thank you, and welcome to the call. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's an honor to serve our district. I want to start by giving a big thank you to Senator Karen Kaiser. Many of us know she served our district for 30 years and was a great champion on health care. I'm just going to mention a few of the areas I work in. I am vice chair of the Health and Long-Term Care Committee. I do a lot of work around 90 days in crisis services. Was working this session on long-term care. Teresa from Normandy Park approached me because her mom had not gotten good care in a memory care unit. So that's one piece of legislation that we're working on to really make sure there's good oversight. I work on a lot of consumer protection, things around the airport and the impacts and health disparities that our community faces, and a lot on just making sure we have a safe and inclusive community. These are very difficult times, and it's so important that everyone feels safe and welcome. So again, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you for joining us. This is Mia Gregerson, and thank you for allowing me to serve you in your 12th session. This year has been challenging, to say the least. We went into the session with a $12 to $15 billion deficit and knew that that would require really combing through everything to look where we could delay some of the programs that we had invested in over the last years, stop some expansions, and just really tighten our belts. With that required a lot of legislation that we weren't planning on doing. We got through that. We finished on time. In the meantime, we passed some really good legislation. For example, unemployment benefits for our striking workers. That's a big deal, especially here in the 33rd District, where workers are always having to negotiate with their employers for better benefits. Also, rent stabilization, that's something we've been working on now for many, many sessions. The permit to purchase, to ensure that folks that are gun carriers have the appropriate permits to help keep our community safe. And I'm happy to report that finally right to repair legislation passed both for wheelchair users and also for electronics and home appliances.
Okay, folks, please press 0 if you have a question for your lawmakers. And we're going to continue with Representative Obras.
Good evening, everyone. This is Edwin Obras, your state representative, and I was appointed just last December to fill the position vacated by Senator Orwall. And I feel like I've hit the ground running. This has been a really long session, 105 days. We just concluded, and with the support of my seatmates, Senator Orwall and Representative Gregerson, I feel as a team we've tackled a lot of party issues and ensured that the budget really was consistent with our values as Democrats. I sit on the Labor, Healthcare, and Community Safety committees. Those are all very much committees where my passion lies, and also aligns really well with the issues that residents in the 33rd Legislative District face. And I look forward to continuing to work through the interim and provide as much engagement with our constituents as much as possible. I'd love to hear from you, and I would love to talk about some of the legislation I helped pass in the committees and other committees that impact daily lives of our residents. Thank you.
All right. So, folks, if you are just joining us, this is a live telephone town hall with your lawmakers from the 33rd District, Senator Tina Orwall and Representatives Mia Gregerson and Edwin Obras. If you have a question for one or all of them, please press 0 on your keypad right now. As you know, we sent you a survey for questions ahead of time, and we got a few. So we're going to start with one of the online questions, and it was from Fred. And Fred asks, what are you doing to stop the Trump administration from dismantling the Education Department, Social Security, and Medicare, Medicaid?
Well, this is Senator Tina Orwall, and thank you for that question. I know we're all deeply concerned about the constant threats of barrage on our system. I think in Washington we get about $20 billion of Medicaid. We also get millions of dollars in Title I that pays for special education and goes to our Title I schools. And so I want to first really acknowledge our Attorney General, who I know has stepped in, is trying to really make sure that the courts are challenging these decisions to stop funding. We're trying to keep our budget strong. We did put some new investments in K-12 and special education, which I do think is a way trying to buffer ourselves and support a high-need area. But we're deeply concerned, and we're going to keep a careful watch on this because it could have a very huge impact on our state.
Okay. And now, yep.
Sure, this is Mia. A little bit from the budget side of things. Senator Orwall talked a little bit about making sure we had a responsible budget. And in that, we made sure to have a strong budget, BSA ending fund balance, which is a budget stabilization account that will free up state dollars for if we needed to come back into special session to deal with the federal administration or deal with any type of huge budgetary holes. That will give us the flexibility to do that. At the same time, in 2019, we passed the Keep Washington Working Act, which helps to ensure that all of our agencies and all of our local governments are all working within the same infrastructure to help keep every Washingtonian safe and know what their rights are and what they can and cannot do with public resources. And we will be doing lots of work to ensure that that is an enterprise-wide effort, and I know a lot of work is already happening now.
Okay, thank you. Folks, if you have a question for your lawmakers, please press 0 on your keypad right now. Next up, we have Ginger, and Ginger has a question about the Multicultural Village funding. Hi, Ginger, can you hear me?
Yes.
Please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. This is not really a question. I know this is a very difficult section, and we want to especially thank 3 of our amazing 33rd District legislators for your tremendous support that opened doors for multicultural families. In partnership with Mercy Housing, we are able to secure the needed capital funding. So by the end of this year, we should be able to close our financing, and we will be able to create 237 new homes that are affordable, multi-generation, from studio to 4 bedrooms in the South King County on the light rail station, that is a Kent Des Moines light rail station site, that we will be able to provide more intensive services to the IDD population, those who need additional support in our region. For this, we just want to say thank you so much. Not only that we will have a housing, we will have community support, but also we will create early learning opportunities for many young children, including those who have developmental disabilities, to be included, to be educated alongside their peers. So for this tremendous support, we just from our bottom of our heart, on behalf of our community, I want to say thank you to all of you who have been such a great champion and support to this project. Thank you so much.
Well, I want to say thank you, Ginger. This is Tina Orwall. It's been great being part of your team these last few years, and I want to thank you for the vision and especially all the supports for some of the children that obviously are the most vulnerable and the families that we need to really embrace and welcome. And it's going to be a beautiful campus, and I really look forward to that being built over the next couple of years.
Hi, Ginger. This is Edwin Obras, and I just want to thank you for your advocacy and bringing the families to Olympia and having discussions with them and what it means for them to be able to have a resource, but also housing in one area. This will be a great resource, not just for the families, but really community, and giving community tools to step up in serving folks who need the support with the IDD community. So kudos to your leadership and the leadership of your board and staff.
All right, thank you. Folks, if you have a question for your lawmakers, please press 0 right now. And next up, we have Anne, who has a question about the deficit. Hi, Anne. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great.
First of all, it's very exciting to hear what Ginger said because, I hadn't heard about that before, that we were making houses for the homeless people. So that's wonderful to hear. My question is, I just recently heard about this deficit we've had, and I'm curious why we didn't know about it sooner. And then my other thought on that is, how does the federal government impact the fact that we have a deficit? And is that potentially a problem if we get punished by the federal government in any way with this housing situation, or are we concerned about the federal government and their share of our budget, I guess I would say?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. This is Mia, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got where we are. And it always feels a little bit shocking when we have a deficit as large as it is. And it was a little bit of the perfect storm. We had a 40-year high inflation. Sometimes that is affected by the federal government and the actions that they take. At the same time, we also had invested one-time dollars during the pandemic to help Washingtonians, whether they were college students or access to health care. And those caseloads are something that are baked into our budget. And because of the great work around the paid family medical leave, all of these things, the caseloads have gone up. In fact, we are the #1 state for those accessing federal aid, financial aid for students. But that cost us money and created a deficit. And the third part of that is we are heavily reliant on middle and low-income families purchasing goods in the state. That is where you hear about our tax code being upside down, because we also house some of the wealthiest billionaires in the world in the same state. And so what you've seen us doing in the last 105 days is really trying to flip that a little bit so that more of those that are the wealthiest few are paying more of their fair share. Now, we didn't go far enough by far this session to close that gap, but we did make strides. And some of that was mostly in closing tax loopholes and some other tax deductions that aren't necessarily serving us anymore. And so that is moving us in the right direction. And I'm committed, and I think my colleagues are too, in continuing the trajectory towards a more fair tax system.
Okay. Please press 0 on your keypad right now if you have a question for your legislators from the 33rd District. Next up, we have a question from the internet, one of our online questions. And let's see, I'm going to read it to you. Stuart asks, why will you reward striking workers? Giving them unemployment insurance doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience in supporting workers who serve the most vulnerable people in our state. They typically serve, they're in nursing homes, they are janitors or working in the hotel industry, they might be Uber drivers. And what happens is they can't afford to risk going on strike in order to help move things forward and ensuring that they have appropriate benefits and health care and safety precautions. And so allowing them some unemployment insurance while they're striking helps to level the playing field for those that really cannot afford to miss a paycheck. They end up being in the food bank lines while they're trying to stand in solidarity with their colleagues.
This is Edwin Obras, and it also allows the playing field to be flattened a little bit for our workers who are faced with kind of an imbalance in the structure where they are having to really fight for their rights and to their workers' rights, a fair wage, good benefits, and allowing unemployment for striking workers does level the playing field. It's not meant to fill their the missing income from their strike. It's really to help offset some of the burden when it comes to striking workers. So this is by no means a way of paying people for striking. And there are some limitations and some limitations to how this is implemented and how it can be used.
Thank you. Please press 0 on your keypad if you have a question for your lawmakers. Next up, we have Phyllis with a question about property taxes. Hi, Phyllis.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to ask the question. But I am concerned about the process of paying our property taxes. Currently, we can do so biannually or annually. And I'm just wondering, can the lawmakers put in any type of intervention where if property taxpayers would like to, they can also pay monthly. So that will be, just, of course, 1/12 of the total yearly property tax, whatever is assessed. It just seems easier. It's not as, daunting to look at a bill that for 6 months and 12 months, you could it's just an easier, smaller bite, and it just looks like if that would be, there should be people that are interested in doing so. So I'm wondering if something can be done where if people elect to, they can keep with the system that we have, or they can go ahead and pay the 1/12 of that total amount, per month.
Well, thank you, Phyllis. I think this is an excellent question. This is something I started working on last year, and I would love to continue to work on it. We were finding a number of people struggling to pay their property taxes. And I think especially for people who have their homes paid off, instead of having it part of their mortgage payment every year, it is in 6 and 12-month intervals. And so this was brought up. I'd like to keep working on it. It seems like a great strategy to help people who really, that's a huge amount of money to pay in a one payment. So I would love to work with you on this if you want to reach out to my office. And again, we do have through the housing crisis line a number where there are foreclosure counselors that can help people that are struggling to pay those. But I agree with you. Having a monthly payment system seems like a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is Mia, and there actually is a way that you can prorate out your payments into monthly payments with King County. There's a third party that's on their website. Happy to put that out, and if you want to send us your email.
Yes, and we can also share the housing line with you as well. But I know when I met with the state, not all jurisdictions allow that. Thank you for looking at it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are 20 minutes into this call, believe it or not. So if you have a question for your lawmakers, please press 0 on your keypad right now. Our next question is from the online survey, and it's from Marianne. And Marianne asks, what about our helpless animals? Did anything pass that protects our pets?
Absolutely. The legislature sprang into action this session to really step up for our animals and our pets. One of them is House Bill 1201, which really addresses the needs of our pets, but also their owners who are living in shelters, and allows those families who are homeless to bring their pets into the shelter, and that's obviously a great way for a person's emotional well-being and the stability of having a part of the family with them at all times. We also saw another bill that increased penalties for abuse, expanded the definition of animal cruelty, and one of my favorite ones that I was able to listen, hear testimony on was the Traveling Animals Act, which as we maybe of a certain age grew up going to the circus and saw a lot of these animals, large animals who participated in circuses like elephants, bears, large cats, this bill will no longer allow these animals who really endure some really cruel practices in their training. And I think Washington State has stepped up in protecting our wildlife and our animals.
Okay, thank you. Folks, if you have a question, please press star. Nope, don't press star, press 0 if you have a question for your lawmakers. Next up, we have Susan, who has a question about DEI. Hi, Susan.
Hello, hi. The question that I have is, since the Trump administration has pushed back and just about eradicated everything that has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and going far back as LBJ's administration to eliminate the Voters' Rights Act, and so many things that he's done. In terms of how it affects Washingtonians, I am wondering if there's any type of fallback on the state implication of those laws as it relates to the fact that Washington is pretty diverse in its community. And if any of those negative things that the Trump administration is doing, will that, outside of federal funding, impact how Washington State operates its laws to help protect its diverse population of people within the state?
Well, this is Mia. Thank you for that question. And it's something that definitely weighs on our shoulders every day. I was the sponsor of the Office of Equity here at the state. We were the first state to have one as a statewide office. And luckily with that, they are able to be really front and center in helping our agencies know what their rights are, how to continue to do their work. I referenced earlier the Keep Washington Working Act. You've seen our other independently elected officials like OSPI, our state superintendent, Chris Rakedahl. He issued a statement related to the federal attempt to prohibit diversity, equity, inclusion programs on February 20th this year. You've seen our AG step up and join lawsuits against other DEI, rolling back DEI efforts. Higher ed institutions are definitely feeling the pressure. And just as a budget writer, there have been lots of different attempts to divest in DEI, and there were times where, as a budget writer, we just said, no, that's not okay, and we're going to continue to invest in those areas. So I think there is a pressure point here where we're all trying to make the best decision, keep moving forward and being an inclusive state. But the fear is great. Our nonprofits, our hospitals, and our local communities are definitely worried. So we have work to do.
Yeah, and this is Tina, and I just really want to support what Mia said. I appreciate this question. We're all deeply concerned about this. I think we're hearing things on a daily, weekly basis that we're worried about. I work on 98, and we do have an LGBTQ plus line that now we're hearing the administration wants to shut down. So we're looking carefully and trying to protect everyone in Washington and keep our services strong in this area.
All right. Please press 0 on your keypad if you have a question for your lawmakers. Next up, we have Allie, and she has a question about police accountability. Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, I can hear you. I was worried you might not be able to hear me.
Yep, we can hear you. Please ask your question.
Okay, so there's a little bit of a story that goes with this, but there's a reason for it. We had an encounter a couple of years ago with a roommate slash friend who had lived with us who ended up taking testosterone for a medical condition and becoming violent and threatening our lives. And Washington has some of the best domestic violence laws on the books, but there isn't very much that they can do for us if the police refuse to enforce them. And he stabbed a knife in the wall in front of us, was still holding it when the police got here, and the police refused to do anything about it. This happened several times, and we ended up having to turn to the courts specifically to get a restraining order or a no-contact order. And when I went and spoke about my experiences online, I found out, both from activists and others, that there are several police departments like ours that don't want to enforce domestic violence laws. So my question is the legislature looking at doing anything regarding police accountability? Because I think domestic violence is a truly bipartisan issue.
Well, Allie, this is Tina Orwall, and really important question. We know that with domestic violence, it can be very lethal. We have a very high number of homicides and suicides that are directly related to domestic violence every day. And so it's very concerning for me to hear that they're not enforcing those laws. A couple things we did this session is the Criminal Justice Training Commission, which is in our area. I did have legislation, and we're expanding it to make sure all law enforcement are trained around trauma-informed approaches to working with survivors of domestic violence, of trafficking, of sexual assault, so that they have better skills to approach this. The other thing is we had Representative Davis did a great bill around domestic violence. And what it's doing is really having some of our leading community nonprofits like Be Free in Kent being part of a co-responder team with law enforcement, so that they're coming in, making sure that services and supports are in place and continue for families where this is an issue. Again, I agree. I think, this is a crisis. We saw really increased rates of domestic violence during COVID and post. And so, again, I think these are good first steps, and I think there's probably more work to be done.
All right. Thank you. We have a poll for you guys tonight. So, okay, it's just 4 questions. So, which issue, actually it's 1 question and 4 answers. Which issue do you feel most affects your daily life? Press 1 if it is cost of housing. Press 2 if it is cost of basic needs like food or clothing. Press 3 if it is education funding. And press 4 if it is transportation. Again, which issue do you feel most affects your daily life? Press 1 if it's cost of housing. 2 if it is cost of basic needs like food or clothing. 3, education funding. And 4, transportation. Okay, we will come back to the results in a little while. And now we're going, let's see, it's an internet question from Sharon. Did the rent cap bill pass? I am a renter and seriously cannot afford another huge spike in rent. I am on limited income and afraid of being pushed into being homeless.
Thanks for the question. This is Edwin Obras. Yes, the rent stabilization bill did pass. There was a little bit of a compromise that occurred. The cap on annual increases at 7% with CPI, which is Consumer Price Index, or inflation, but it is capped all the way up to 10%. That includes the CPI. It does remove single-family residents, but it also caps mobile manufactured homes to 5% annually. So this was a priority of the caucus in order to make sure that we had some legislation that provided some stability to our working families. We know that it's tough for anyone to not have a predictability about what they're paying from year to year on their rent. That's not the case when somebody owns and is paying a mortgage. I'm blessed and able to pay for a mortgage each month, and it doesn't change. It's steady, and I can figure out what my expenses are. And I think that personally, a renter should have the same benefits and the luxury of being able to have that stability in budgeting for their food, their children's needs, their pets, and it's really a value that we can all pretty much live with if we know that the outcomes is people aren't going into the streets and becoming houseless or homeless.
Thank you so much. Folks, please press 0 on your keypad if you have a question for your 33rd District legislators. Next up, we have Linda, who has a question about protecting LGBTQ rights. Hi, Linda.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah. My concern is I want to make sure that Washington State is going to continue to protect LGBTQ rights, and especially transgender people. I'm somebody who transitioned like 30 years ago, and I've traveled all over the country and to other countries and never had a problem until recently with the Trump administration. Now I've taken a job where I don't even leave the state. I'm half afraid to go outside of Washington, Oregon, and California.
This is Mia, and I'm really sorry about hearing about that fear, and that is something that the state, at least being part of the House Democratic Party, we are definitely standing tall in solidarity with our Senate Democrats also. One of the things that we did this year that we really spent a lot of political capital on, we believe that it was the right thing to do, was House Bill 1296. This is to continue to promote safe and supportive public education system so that our students know what their rights are, parents know what their rights are. This is just a clarification from what we call the ITL, Tina? Intent. Basically, it didn't go to the ballot, so this was a parental rights bill last year that we passed, but this is a continuation of that has more clarity to it. We also passed 1971, which is access to the prescription for hormonal therapy, and that is a huge win for us. We want to ensure that everybody has the ability to get access to those prescriptions. So in our budget, we also continue resources towards helping nonprofits who are serving these communities to ensure that they have access points to get information, to find safe harbor, to be housed, to have social construct and socials together to stay safe. Just a few things.
Yeah, and this is Tina. And again, I'm so sorry that you had that experience, and we don't want anyone in our state to have that. And you know, someone who works in mental health and behavioral health, I worry about trans youth. They're very high risk for suicide, and it's so important that we have safe spaces. I think I mentioned earlier about 988 and then wanting to remove the support for LGBTQ+, and I think our state will step in and make sure we're doing the right thing and keeping those supports in place.
All right. Thank you, folks. Please press 0 if you have a question for your lawmakers. Next up, we have another internet question. It's from Amanda, and she asks, I know that the Parental Rights Bill, House Bill 1296, passed, But there was so much noise around this legislation that I don't know what we ended up with. Can you explain?
Yeah, there was a lot of noise and a lot of rhetoric around it. We stayed the course. We stayed focused on the legislation, a good policy that can be implemented, a message that was pro-student, pro-family, pro our education system. And just looking at a brief summary of the final and gross substitute bill, it's still, directs OSPI to establish a process for receiving and investigating complaints. It also modifies a list of protected classes in non-discrimination provisions that apply to public schools. It establishes a statement of students' rights and associated duties for school districts, charter schools, and FTECs. It also establishes retaliation protections for public school employees supporting students in the exercise of their legal rights and performing work in accordance to certain requirements. It also requires school districts, charter schools, and state tribal education compact schools to have policies and procedures to prioritize the protections of student safety, access to discrimination-free academic environment, and access to the program of basic education and privacy. So I think all of those things, again, are a way that we really draw a box around helping ensure that students, all students regardless, have the same rights and the same experience.
Okay, thank you. Please press 0 if you have a question for your lawmakers. We still have about 21 minutes in this call, so we got time. Now, next question is from Edward. Hi, Edward, can you hear me? Edward has a question about the criminal justice system. Hello? Okay. Well, we might come back to Edward. Let us continue with... hold on a second. We just talked about that. Okay. Larry has a question about what Trump is doing with taxes. Larry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, about the tax deductions, after the tariffs, where we already owe trillions of dollars, is that realistic that Trump can actually have a tax deduction for everybody? And who is it for?
Well, Larry, this is Mia, and that's a great question. I have to admit that I'm not tracking the ebb and flow and the talks of the tariffs and the maybe yes, maybe not kind of discussions that are happening around tariffs. I do think that where tariffs affect Washington State is our farmers. We have a very strong agricultural community that we export 98% of our, potatoes to other parts of the world. And so, those commitments are made a long time before the product is actually shipped, whether it's blueberries, wine, potato, pulses, very gooey dust. And so that's where I find, at least as in the Washington State Legislature, we are very concerned about tariffs and, of course, our different relationships with China, Taiwan, and others.
Okay. Before we go to our next question, let's see how we're doing with the poll. Okay. So, wow, we have a tie between 1 and 2. 38% of you answered that the cost of housing and the cost of basic needs like food or clothing are the things that are most affecting your life. And then 15% said education funding and 8% said transportation. So there you go. Our next question is from Nicholas about the homeless. Nicholas?
Yeah. Hi. Good afternoon. My question is, so I've lived in Des Moines probably, I don't know, most of my life, apart from like 3 years. Actually, another piece that has something to do here is I'm in recovery from drug addiction. I'm almost to 9 years clean. And I think that kind of puts me in a unique position to speak on this and kind of have a concern with the housing project on Camp Des Moines near I-5. If this is to help the unhoused, are there controls or anything in place to help mitigate against potential spikes in crime property crimes, etc. A lot of people are raising families in Des Moines, and it's a concern that's shared by others than myself. Just wondering what things kind of have anything in place there.
Well, thank you for your question. And, my background, I'm a mental health professional and worked in the area of helping people that are unhoused. And one of the things I learned is a lot of people do have mental health or chemical dependency, and most tend to be a victim of crimes versus actually committing crimes. But I hear what you're saying around the housing. And so the best model really provide intensive services on site, behavioral health, substance use, things that when people do transition from homelessness, that they actually have a lot of support so they can be successful. And so, again, what they found is when people aren't housed, they're in emergency departments, they have medical emergencies. And once we can help someone become housed and really put intensive services around them, they actually do very well. And so we have a number of the projects. I know there's one in Burien right now. I think Catholic Community Service has one in that area. It's for veterans. I think about 1 out of 5 people that are homeless are veterans. The project we talked about earlier is going to be families. It's going to be workforce housing. But, yeah, there's different kind of housing models. And I think one of the things I would tell you is that I really hope we can really have a regional approach that really brings in all level of government and our providers to really look at what are the solutions to help more people find stable housing and rebuild their lives.
And thank you, Senator Orwall, touching on the fact that resources in the community are really effective and impactful way to ensure that people are on the trajectory to better in their lives or just being able to be stable. Not all crime is tied to being homeless, but we do have, in the legislature this year, we did pass House Bill 2015, which is helping fund some public safety. It gives cities and counties some authority to impose a 0.1% sales tax. It is up to the city or county to do that. It allows the government to invest directly in community safety and criminal justice services. So local leaders can work with their community to see what best fits for them. But we did pass a bill that gives them and empowers them that ability.
Yeah, this is Mia, and I think this is such an important topic and one that continues to come up in every room because, we don't have enough housing supply. Homelessness isn't always because somebody is having a mental health breakdown and can't work or whatever the other stories that come out. It might be because they can't afford, just similar to the poll that we heard today. They just can't afford basic, food, water, shelter, and they just need a little bit of a hand up. And so we need to continue to work with our nonprofits to help get resources into people's hands so they can pay that month's rent, or if they have a health care bill, or they're trying to get out of a relationship that's unhealthy. We also have in South King County a lot of newly arriving immigrants who are doing great. They're getting their children into school and they're stabilizing, but being homeless is where they start. And so helping to get them a home and a place of safety, a place to put their things at night, a warm bed where they can sleep well. And I guess, we talked about the tax system right now. And until we really work on the tax system, we just don't have enough resources to help people who deserve our help. Income inequality we have the biggest income inequality of any other state. We have a lot of work to do. And I get it. Visual poverty does feel scary, but we have to continue to be compassionate in this work and think about that. Maybe not all crime. In fact, I think about cybersecurity, that all happens behind closed doors. There's a lot of crime that's happening that's not all visual. So we have a lot of work to do, and I'm hoping we're all going to be able to work together to fix that.
Thank you. We have another internet question. This one is from Mike. I understand the need for new revenue, but I am afraid this will hit me and my family hard since we're already struggling while barely making a dent in the wallets of the super wealthy. Can you describe the revenue options that were passed, and also is the property tax increasing?
Well, thank you for that question. I will start. This is Tina. Some of the things we did, we began to do this year or build on what we've done previously. One is the capital gains tax. That's a tax if you have gains in the stock market over $250,000 that you're taxed. We did create, if that number is over $1 million, we put a little higher tax percentage on those assets. The other thing we did was on the estate tax. And actually, there were two changes. One is we made families who are subject to the Washington State estate tax move from 2.1 to 3 million. So there's a lot of families now that will not be subject to the estate tax. But then for those really high end, like 30 million plus estates, they will pay a higher rate. So that did get bumped. We also, the other taxes we looked at were really around B&O taxes. Again, trying to put most of the focus on businesses that make over $250 million a year. Again, we weren't able to move the wealth tax or other things that maybe would have been different. But again, I think we're starting with the first few to kind of move in that direction. And also, I think Representative Gregerson mentioned we did close some tax loopholes.
Yeah, and I'm worried too that, we are paying too much in taxes. And so every little move we do with the tax system, we have to be really mindful because it makes no sense at all to make changes in our tax system and have more people fall through the cracks and need more services. So those are the things that we are constantly monitoring. We are just a couple of days out of session, and so the ink is still wet. The governor hasn't signed it. It's not actually implemented yet, so it's just a little bit harder for us to get the specifics. But I promise you that you are talking to 3 elected officials who are absolutely committed to ensuring that as we continue to work on the tax system, we are not hurting the most vulnerable people.
And thank you. I guess there was a question, this is Tina again, about how many people are impacted. I know when we looked at the wealth tax, which we moved in the Senate and not the House, it would have been on people who had financial assets over $50 million, which would have been about 4,300 taxpayers statewide. As far as the state tax, I don't know if I have a number on that. Again, I think it's a much smaller number. I think it's in the hundreds.
Yeah, and there's over 8 million people in the state, so it's just a very small number of people. And there are certain legislative districts that have a higher concentration of these higher earners. So we are talking in partnership with those county legislative districts.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have Mark with a transportation question. Hi, Mark.
Hi. My question is the 509 extension. I grew up in Berrien in the early 70s when they were building that, and I was excited to see it finally being connected to I-5, but when I drove over there and looked at the on-ramp off of 24th Avenue and about 190 something, I noticed that the state is going to charge us to use that. And I thought that our taxes paid to build those freeways to connect. One other question I had, the tunnel going through the airport, I know you all use it. I use it daily. When are they going to finish the work?
Well, thank you, Mark. Those are excellent questions. I know I've gone to a number of events and meetings with Washington DOT. I have concerns about the tolling. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, Senator Kaiser and I had something added, which was to do a tolling study so that looking at whether our airport community could be exempt or greatly reduced from any tolling. It seems like it's really being built for moving of goods. So, could that really weigh more heavily on trucks? That's being looked at, but I am deeply concerned because I feel like we already take a big toll and weight of the airport, and this is another layer for a community that would be really burdened by tolling. The other thing is we did get some sound walls up with that extension. One of the things that's happened in the transportation budget is because of the cost of all the materials and everything, it kind of slowed down some of the transportation projects. My understanding is this one continue to be a priority. But again, I share your concern, and I really think we need to do a lot of outreach to really push back on the tolling.
So I'm looking at the transportation budget. We have three budgets: the operating budget, the transportation budget, and the capital budget. The transportation budget looks like they continue investments on the Puget Sound Gateway, which talks about the connection. We also have some investments related to the 224th corridor completion, which is a move ahead, Washington. So the thing about the places where you and I drive, I live on 192nd, very close to 188, where the tunnel is that we just have a lot of freight mobility. And so we need to keep those roads moving. We put, $50 billion into the tunnel. So we need to get that truck traffic from I-5, 167, I-5 to 509, and not on our local streets. They are the ones that are going to be paying the tolls. I am not as uncomfortable with the tolling of the new portion of the road because all of us know the other roads to get around. We're not really going to be using that portion. These folks are going to take the south access to the airport rather than having to do that 3-mile loop to get into the airport. All of that's going to be healthier for us, less road traffic, less idling. And so I think in the end, having thoroughways that are not touching our local streets is also good. So we, as we always know too, transportation, the way we fund infrastructure is very backwards. And so we have a lot of work to do there too.
Okay, well, we have 6 minutes left of this call, so we're going to hurry up and do this. Let's see. The next question is from the internet, and it's from Julie. And the question is, I don't understand the bill to keep militias out of Washington. What does that even mean?
I don't. Yeah, so Chair Mena had a bill that protects a military presence within our borders. And
this Tina, I will weigh in.
Okay.
I think it pertains to National Guard. And our governor obviously can have the National Guard go out for emergencies and different situations in our state. And I think the purpose of this legislation is to say other governors cannot send their National Guard into our state. I think was the purpose of the bill. But
or the president.
Or the president cannot send in, which again, I don't know how much of that's federal or state. But again, I think this is a way of trying to assure our residents that we're trying to keep our state safe and protected.
Well, and it looks like Montana and Texas also have similar laws.
Yeah.
And it doesn't restrict the National Guard from supporting any disaster response or recovery efforts. This is really about keeping some consistency with our laws in Washington State and having the state being empowered to have this authority over its military presence.
All right. So we're going to be going to closing remarks in a minute. We had a question from Josh, but now I don't see it. And let's see, it was something about how early can constituents get in touch with you with ideas about legislation for next session. So let's answer that, and then we will go to closing remarks.
This is Tina Orwall. I definitely will start working on bills probably starting in June. Two of the bills I did this session came from constituents and really enjoyed working on those. And so, again, want to encourage people to reach out if they have ideas or for things they want to meet on.
Absolutely. We are a part-time citizen legislature, so we also are very busy and working in our day jobs and doing other things, but never do we not want to make time for our constituents to talk about legislation. And sometimes it's also just talking about what other programs are out there to help you navigate the system. So happy to have coffee with you or meet anytime.
That's the sentiment also carries with me that I'm dedicated to engaging our residents in things that matter to you. As Representative Gregerson mentioned, we are citizen legislators, and we are also people that want to hear from our neighbors. It means a lot to this team to engage and understand fully what everyday citizens are going through. And I think the best way to come up with any kind of public policy is through the people we serve. So I'm dedicated to meeting with folks. I think you'll be able to easily find our contact information online, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, and one thing that I didn't tell you because I forgot and then I remembered was that he was calling, he's a professor at Highline College, and he was asking about, how early should his students contact you if they have an idea for a bill. And my understanding is that lawmakers really always really like it when students get involved in the legislative process. So I think that they can just contact you whenever they want, as soon as it's not like December 31st, because that might be a little late.
Sure. And if I may share a really quick story about some students from CLU, for example, who came into the Community Safety Committee and testified on a bill that they helped crafted. So it's a great way for students to really be a part of a solution, and we're here to partner with you.
Absolutely. And my Hire Ed bill was done with students from around the state. So it's very excited to learn more.
Nothing about us without us.
All right. So this is it. We have very little time for closing remarks, so let's get it going. Senator Orwall?
Yes. I just want to say thank you for being part of the town hall tonight. I just really appreciate you taking time out of your evening. Again, if you want to do a phone call or Zoom, meet for coffee, let me know. You really give us our marching orders, so thank you.
Go ahead, I'll let you.
This is Edwin Obras. It's been a pleasure and a great opportunity for me to serve in for the 33rd Legislative District in the last, 4 months now. I've learned a lot about systems and how systems can either work for you or work kind of against you, but that's why we're here to make sure that you're part of the process and helping craft legislation that impacts your lives. And I look forward to working in the interim on some important bills around labor and hopefully community safety and healthcare. Then I'll pass the mic over to...
To finish it off right at 6:30. Thank you so much for spending time with us on this long spring evening, and it's such an honor to serve you. Hope to see you around town, and please remember, you don't have to have a bill to talk with us. We just want to hear how it's going and how we can do better. Talk to you later.